I wasn't in for the octaves, and I was like, I had this like fantasy passion I need to be It's amazing. Well, I do need a minute to get my computer together. Sorry.
The stand isn't set up.
Are we starting an email chain or anything like that?
We could. I think internet is a little bit spotty.
Yeah.
You know Rebuttals?
Yeah.
But
Oh, and just BT dubs. If we read two color highlights, it's always blue. I don't think we're doing one, but
Alright, there's some water behind your computer.
Sorry?
There's some water behind your computer.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you.
Oh, that's actually a little bad for you. It's my computer hashes through its issues. I'm living on day one. I've been saying for the children to have it's my only motivation.
Never mind, I don't need the flashlight.
okay.
My computer's like at 10% and
Hey, thanks. Do any of y'all want the flash drive?
Nope.
Where?
I woke up like this.
no, we're no homework.
Okay.
No, I'm like,
Just give me 2 more minutes here.
I think
Woo! Couldn't get the room. Yeah, I'm gonna sit here and conscientiously write down every word in this debate. Well, he wrote down God. You can draw pentagrams on your flow.
Yeah. I'm great code.
are you good?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm sorry. I was just dealing with a lot of computer problems. Maybe.
Is everyone ready?
Yeah.
Jordan?
Hi.
Plan the United States federal government should normalize trade relations with Cuba that advantages multilateralism, anti-Americanism, and unilateral military policies, decimating U.S. legitimacy. The cost of sense been better to great power wars corruption. 12 like acting doctrine explicitly inclusive conflicts of left Americans ready to put home for the teacher power changing China's wars and economic dividing stability as neighbors. 46% Americans want U.S. and minus own business or high service by historical standard ledger is where strategic overshare China's cheap will catch Americans dollar euro China's from the global equals really privacy hardly ensures effective influence UBS defense policy sharing the U.S. law to pick its price. Kill for your rest making new social to manage the diverse economy the realm of global power merchant powers or showing their own past rights to grow demanding rising powers to bring their own conception of the world or smarter U.S. role would give rising powers to the beach city U.S. use to lead their focus to diverse and wieldy global cooperation as multilateral incredible alternative bandwagon international relations among U.S. allies with the U.S. listed reviving legitimacy activity and Cuban motivations by national business relations extreme U.S. relations for anti-American of the coalition abroad that U.S. legitimacy international preventing the economic political cost of the world allies where 90% of the culture with the Gulf War by the American sector financial terror operation which enabled the killing convinced chaos and troops Americans spend on hedge money sets that reconcile analyze the strategic concept that were the concept little action of the action for you see the consequences as well as the so many come the effort the space of the influence security after respect for U.S. leadership is promised more the divided world the United Washington no multitude of the influence of working for the most blood to make us feel like takeovers like first is repealed representing commission for the multilateral for the international committee's version of 9. The U.S. needs to improve its direct reputation damaged by Iraq and Guantanamo respect the U.S. to its most almost to respect the international law and towards Jeffrey and Jonah Africa even enemies will actually remember acting if the U.S. more effectively in multiple forms of Washington store credibility all major actions will and to the bargain for household so prolific the course of action and the bargain being considered powerful balls and single willing to reconnect to acting unilateral steps towards effective multilateralism next second is a plan sets a clear scenario for cooperation with Latin America Caribbean bargaining the OAS Y13 and to the human embargo set of profits with a lot of the U.S. religious disturbance perfection adjacent of racial racial regional organization like American organization American States and the Russian to grapple with the use of Latin America while Washington when it continued to refer which never contribution in hemisphere partners would be reduced to a circle of footnote events that bolsters influencing international institute parts of being virtual. Pursuing global foreign policy for regional especially the emerging economy position to with the West and town perceiving economy with influence is a part of the American team is has regional allies the U.S. leader of the globalization making the thorns that the U.S. trust the jet and better Latin relation direction for the rest of the world the immediate dimension for the goal today when it gets to the American shipping from a paper confrontation the U.S. wants to accomplish elsewhere next it also leads to great power sharing and international cooperation with all the common feeling 11 multilateral Christian drive property actions my global actors the effects for the agree with the action that they can build political interaction to always come to be go to the institutions and corporate on ways left to quickly U.S. fall next U.S. leader wider rewards the global hegemony of the U.S. and Germany were too big to peace keeping Democrats of the wind use property the actions property was prevented to rob and never self get blood a lot of them supremacist prevention middle states from challenging a war and precedent intervention to be daunting next the rise of the rest is inevitable but leadership make the transition safe the ultimate transition result in 07 girls and response to shift to regard the great power of the was a rest of the words likely if movements about to have a stable take military research couple super curses because rapid from blocking adventure the multiple physical philosophy multiple system words words power feeding its gold with third world war such a collision having finding the real speed word that we dwarf World War II the use of facing combat murder democracy personal liberty being close to this vital that ensures transition multiplier encouraging a gentleman minimize probably great power and social science proves power vacuums support the national incentive to see sense by fighting both further nine. People are mainly motivated by the pursuit of attention, ancestral security, and material prosperity. We know people are motivated not instrumental motive essential to the most important extent. Accumulated research shows that humans are heroes for sensitivity, status, hemoglobin, and incentives for direct competition, sensitivity, comparably weak incentive to direct perfect action, competition for status to be 0-7 essence. Racist is both flawed, historically flawed, and politically debilitating. Critics win, witch hunt mentality, fragmenting movements, members, and concrete racial or attempt to pinpoint any attempt to pinpoint every racist instance is both a conspiracy theory like it's a performance that mirrors the politics of the two far right. So this card is going to take me 2 minutes for 98. When important needs from download this after having progress for reasons theory of is racist and independent the DNA of American life. Disagree the seats of race on one side of view of the legal system, the entire race and position versus being more destructive than constructive and advancing the conversation on race and to not deny the dark side of American law history. The dark side has been very slow and that's one of my point. 2 more positive effects of American legal system. I've been skewed picture we post on one side if we go to the 13, 14, 15 amendments we ignore Brown and we ignore civil rights. Serious problem for race and equality race is unrealistic. Ignore progress made the accusation of the American legal system held in lots of respect in the system that can be applied to something so the American method is probably you always paint a picture just fair but only focus on things that go wrong. The curriculum race theory literature represents the working on the opposite side of the spectrum. If you read books of literature that the bell and reverse if you look at the evidence on one side of the states it becomes to look persuasive when we look at the evidence as a whole you see a more complex picture. The most considered realities are not whether do not load stuff to as you would find is determined CRT is argument that's around performance the basis and problems the basis ideals in line and themselves are inherently flawed that they are inherently racist the inherent racist approaches taken center a false path of constant several effects person at least a witch hunt mentality when people are constantly searching for more and more subtle forms of racism among themselves people invest their time coming international rugby coverage and actually they might seem more favorable to argument rather than looking at the start problem that how people didn't come to how it's earning much and how much they would have a sense without looking at subtle false leads to break down into being even among people who are on the liberal side people who are fundamentally allies who will think racial problems very important finding it possible to hold a discussion because it starts for motivating agendas and biases. I do not think that there's a way that we can move forward. This needs to be destructive dialogue with outsiders, people who are not already believers in the racism of the law. Shannon wrote an article which to the entire law reviews and dedicating not only to criticizing his views but to speculation the twisted motives that lead to a member of a minor group to take a position that to prove the CRT position that is not the way to move forward. if it's truly American society is inherently racist, does that mean it is essentially hopeless? The genetic theorists discourage the idea of reforming the first idea that any bad hair is inherent. We expect to see the same kind of thing we are dealing with ideological equivalent involving the claim that there's an inherent genetic flaw in American society is true. We cannot afford to forget it history, but it's also true we have three main investors who will also pass fixated on their inevitability. We're likely to move forward. If you rehearse explosive issue clear reporting blaming somebody or finding the culprit, then we're likely to find our united society tackling these problems. Like scenario planning is good at it's mocking in Junior 13. Scenarios function in theory development, identifying the hypothesis, analysis, and research of what in complex pieces, teaching to the science and scenarios sometimes will deploy by the postmakers do the example should be used for theory building and pedagogy to run in civil relations theories and scholars of developing hypotheses and getting generative activity theories because we are nurturing the effect of which is teaching notes apply the theory to policy study the condition with which high consequence low probably best example in nuclear war. Consider how mining curves such as words improve the study of iron. Next global war does not result from a Western desire for control in the plants outside. Is Chandler not critical to assume that it is the interest of Western actors that lie beyond the expression of political response global there would be understanding essential instrument from the perspective seems unable to contemplate the possibility of lack of strategic drive control that defines global war today. This medical for me makes assumption that interest equal to what you're relevant to explain the proliferation aiming to recruit global discourse merely rebels in the global intent hegemonic dead dies of the empire, the exploiter journey, global hyperspace, clear for the displacement, global awareness of the lack of political stakes and discussion, the introductions for rather than the frameworks concerning dominant we see interventions just on the basis of availability basis of regular the interest space and enemies for being and attempted regulation to lack of strategic declarative shaping the intervention lack of political stakes involved in globalization scriptures seem to reflect the lack of political stakes rather than the urgency to threat lack of political stakes and the introductions for that makes sense.
Science proves that power vacuums support the natural sensitive plot. It's his entire thesis of the one you see predicated off of social science.
Not all of it. Our argument is that a focus on social science is a good thing, but also a focus on things like empirical falsification is also good.
Okay, are all people represented equally in social science?
I'm not sure if I can make that a statement. I think that social science is a good method for like an overall the best attempt.
Let's talk about this Harvard evidence. This is a white guy that got his like degree at the University of like Minnesota and is writing like a law review. Why can he speak? Well, first of all, why did you read this piece of evidence?
I read the piece of evidence because I like the state.
Okay, but like, why do you assume we were going to tell you that the state was bad or that? Wait, why did you? I'm not going to address my question. Thanks. Why did you feel? Okay, like, do you read this against policy teams?
Do I read it against policy teams? Yes. What is a policy team?
What? I'm trying to figure out why you thought it was important for you inside of the 1AC to just acknowledge that you
you're classifying at a race
state.
team with your preamps.
Right, my argument is that why was it productive for you to preempt us telling you that the state was bad?
I thought it was a good idea because I think that the defending that the United States federal government.
Okay, but how did you assume we were going to tell you that defending the federal government is bad?
Of course, I can't assume anything. I just decided.
So why put it in
read
there?
this already. I like reading the Farber cards, so I read the Farber cards.
Okay, what gives him the right to say that the United States federal government is not racist as a white male?
I don't think I can say that the United States
no, I didn't say
is
you.
not racist. I said that
the
reformist policies are possible.
Raising your voice doesn't get your point across. My question is, Farber, as the author, what gives him the ability as a white male to say that the United States federal government is not
racist? I think Farber can make assumptions that the United States federal government can do reformist policies based off.
Furthermore, this evidence is specific to law, right? That's not necessarily the United States federal government. If you're engaging, look, he says that like laws are like not racist, but what is his defense about why the federal government as an institution is not racist?
He's a professor of law. I think he can make assumptions about how the federal government can do things like change laws, for example. Which
so because the United States federal government,
I think he's in a position that
what does hegemony mean? What does that mean in context of an individual? Could an individual have a hegemony?
Like examples of like how the United States federal government has changed laws in the past, or like how they could do something.
Like, let me rephrase it like this. What does it mean for someone to have leadership? What does leadership mean? Do you mean the type of leadership that allows for colonialists to go to Africa and bring slaves here? Like, what is leadership?
Are you talking about leadership in IR, or are you talking about leadership in
IR? Yes.
Yeah, leadership in IR means that other countries perceive the United States as being actor them in multilateral.
Wait, how can leadership in context of IR mean that other countries see us as being someone that they can like follow?
Well, actually,
like why do
we read evidence that cites other Latin American countries who believe that the plan is a good idea and that would revive U.S. legitimacy in foreign policy because
so
right now,
other countries want to legitimize the United States in Latin America.
Well, other countries want the United States to lift the embargo because it's a pretty
that begs the question about whether or not they want them to actually lift the embargo or if they want them to still live.
I'm confused about what you just said.
All right, one off case.
You say it was called 1C the case?
Yes, yes.
There you go.
Oh, rewind this one.
Yes.
Go.
Thank you.
Sorry, my name.
Terribly. The 1AC Act is with the world is something that can be fixed with a quick band-aid. In doing so, they ignore the blatant hypocrisy of USA and political resentments of black men and centerpiece of American politics. Their hegemony gained by the 1AC is literally the hegemony of white as Bobo. 2013, our culture is deeply infused with the anti-black bias and service and teachers revealed the stereotypes of African Americans less, hardworking less, intelligent white political resentments remain a centerpiece of American politics. Psychological experiments show blackness is typically tied to the image of the violence and danger where it's not, and where it's not. Individuals are often a cover story to why the treatment was legitimate. Stopping first policing in New York and screamingly paying the acts of the racial testing, misunderstanding, and quiet by Samir in policing, defending against aggressive shaking treatment to the lives of black and spinning to you the legacy of past racism directed at black alien blacks is still distorting American way of life. It's the United States more like the cities that we have failed to destroy a lie during the rotating path to generate new strange disease for which we have no security. Now the 1AC humanism creates a death culture that justifies the extinction of people of color online. 84 the movement of the power institution race and imperialist military power have been misfit in place within doomsday phrases. How can we talk about the struggle, the race, and the poverty exploitation? There will be nowhere after the bundle with effects of nuclear working to the 25 to 100 million people because the same number of African people who died between 1492 and 1893 African sectors to new world people. Also, we knew the world we knew it in centuries ago. Our world is language, culture, and the ways in the death code convinced to be more concerned with death and life, more than willing to demonstrate survival at any cost in the struggle for liberty and peace and dignity. As women of color, where the word is not the passing with the fight for people all from and continue to have hegemony or the multilateralism can never account for the way that people of color never have the ability to collect social hegemony. Black lives are not worth as much as any other lives. This Brown held a radical petition for resistance that was foregrounded by the 1AC glorification of society. Goldberg 714 black lives are not worth as much as any other life. Black death is not more like any other death. In fact, it's celebrated for those who constantly are to retain a commitment to the American democracy and American justice system are deeply entrenched in white supremacy. In order for the American side to continue blackness, must be contained those various markers of the ghettoized, locked up, and killed. They can't do nothing. If you don't want to change the system, you're not being cautious, careful, or moderate. You're being actively oppressive because the system as it currently exists is unjust. Instead, cause more willingness to call for the overall system, call for the continuity of oppression. We must actively say what we can do to actively resist the system. We must never figure out everywhere the position for performance for resistance. Pessimism is not a resident in America. It is strictly built on the ideology of white supremacy. Anti-black and anti-black is one of the fundamental principles of the retaining commitment towards working towards a justice system that is not yet exists. It will look nothing like this. Now, expanding the inclusionary circle of civil society can never include blackness. It's founded on the contradistinction to their humanism is birthed from the murder of the slave owners in 2010. The discourse that libraries the justification of freedom of the slave is not the product of the human being having suddenly miraculously recognized the slave and manufactured discourse themselves and further evidence of slave fundamental political discourse predicated on the grammar of suffering whose constituent element are expectations and alienates late. Middle Ages gave rise to the ontological category and ontological combination system with making continue to make possible both war and peace. The human was born but not before it murdered the black fortune. The symbiosis to the political ontology of humanity and the social death of black, the more political imagination of society, civil society, and the enable the fungibility of the slave metaphor. For the left, legible the condition of the slave comes to the political discourse recognizing the structural ontology where words to this value recognized by imagining freedom. Freedom has never been a trajectory of humanist knowledge about the infinite trajectory of freedom that emanates from humanism. However, anything but even now the alternative is to reject the notion of freedom that produces violence against the slave. The freedom is an illusion created by the shackles of civil society, and abandoning it is the only way to burn down the structures of hierarchy that produce violence against the slave. The style of the 1AC continues down the same regurgitation law as opposed to the production of knowledge. Only our negation opens up the door to new forms of knowledge to new types of debate. Read Brinkley 12. There's black leader being produced every moment of the day. Their whole library area, the library section, the stacks of relevant information that might be useful to them. And the reason why we have made this such an isolated, isolated the way that people are really interested in knowledge products, we don't necessarily see the relation to it. So rather than taking the only way you can have a plan for what to do with the different democracies and to define where the US has already defined it as, and get authors who you have to find your solid evidence for whatever you want to change. I think that we can be producing new arguments rather than having a solid evidence. You have evidence to support to find parts of your argument. Just writing an academic paper that will change the very way of thinking about the game that we're playing. This potential connection both the academy and also to our public, and that will create a space for teams who want to talk about anti-black and other teams that want to talk about defining the nature of gender and how we engage in policy. Go to the case of it. The preempts on case for Q, the farther evidence makes the claim that the legal system is inherently racist is ludicrous. Numerous examples like stand your ground laws and stop and frisk policing brings the question what the affirmative qualifies as racist and focus on the state to avoid international conflicts, ignore the living of populace. You should vote the warrant to this card. Rodriguez 2009. We are collectively witnessing, surviving, and working in a time of unprecedented state, organized human captures, physical, social, psychological, and alienation. The condition presents a profound crisis in the political possibility for those struggling against white supremacist state, which continue to institutionalize social liquidation and physical dispersing of black, brown, and aboriginal people nearby and far away from here to approach racism, neoliberal militarism, and U.S. state hegemony in a legitimately global way. It is nothing short of unconscionable to expend significant political energy protesting American wars over behind liberals' reform and struggle to defend against the racist class. Agent misogynist criminalization of unspoken politics of assumption that takes for granted the mystified permanence of domestic warfare, a targeted and massive suffering of black, brown, and indigenous subjugation of African American nation building. Despite the social and political and repression, the establishment that does not care to envision, much less politically prioritize the abolition of U.S. domestic warfare and is structuring white supremacy and social life as the most urgent task to present the future. We pose the question of how are we able to accommodate and even culturally and politically normalize the strategic, explicit, and openly racist technology of the state that effectively socialize, neutralize, and frequently liquidate the entire nearby population of our own people, given that ours is the very same population that have historically struggled to survive and overthrow such classical structures of domination as colonial, frontier conquest, racial slavery, and other genocide. How can we live with ourselves in this domestic state of emergency? Why did we forfeit radically challenging, dislodging, and transforming the ideological and institutional premises of domestic warfare in the favor of short-term, winnable policy reform? The pragmatic focus builds a good citizen to responses requires a conceptualization of the state that is far more complex. Laura and Wright proposes one step toward an abolition policy that involves development of a grassroots pedagogy to teach ourselves about domestic warfare, so we no longer treat it simply as a scholarly activist framework to understand that the state can and must be radically confronted on multiple fronts by an abolition policy. Next, another the most obvious outward manifestation of racism is the criteria to be judged, the resolve to defend itself, and the intent to rationalize the world and show that the notion of whiteness is mistaken. Fanon, 52. Young was here unalterable, black people was here dark and unarguable, and the tournaments who pursued me, disturbed me, and angered me. Negroes are savages, brutes, adult, and little, but in my case I knew that these statements were false. They were the myth of the Negroes that had to be destroyed at all costs. They introduced it to me to the existence that was held by certain people, but I was always told that we must hope that there would be soon very disappear. What was the color prejudice? That color is the most obvious outward manifestation of race that had been made possible the criteria by which men entered the respect of the social and educational attainments. Black security, the burdens of homelessness, hunger, eviction, state violence, and racism of the ethical of action have been picked up by the state, facing charity, NGO, pressure groups, and philanthropy, and social movement groups that invite the attention in these systems of the strong streets whose mission is better to connecting the deprived of the government. Bobby 10. The burning black people are identical to the way it was 185 years ago. Homelessness, hunger, eviction, and state violence, and racism, their calls are just as loud. And in fact, in present-day missionaries just as dutifully grapple with these deprivations. The theater discussing moving against deprivation is to appeal to the norms of human rights of the overwhelming majority of individuals in the organization fighting deprivation in our state, facing every existing NGO poses central demands as one who presupposes an invite to intention and the assistance of the strong space. The mission is about connecting the deprived to the government. The progressive new laws are the source of the strategic direction and the value for those fighting deprivation. They are constantly exalted and underwritten. Now the activists act as civil agents, not so much to save the power, but to be saved. Contemporary. All right, later in the block. All right, go for it. Process.
All right, Mr. Wilderson makes a connection between the ontic and the
I can't hear you.
Mr. Wilderson makes a connection.
Mr. Wilderson, Dr. Wilderson. Let's be respectful.
Yes, okay, Dr. Wilderson makes the connection between the ontic and the ontological. How does he make the assertion that the connection between the ontic creates ontological debt?
You read Wilderson?
I'm gonna move closer to your little soft
Do I read Wilderson?
Can you say that one more time?
I asked you a question. How?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
How did Dr.
You can
Wilderson make
ask
the connection between the ontic and the ontological debt?
I kind of don't understand your question.
He asserts that people are ontologically dead. People who are born with black skin are ontologically dead. How does he make that assertion based off of like a study of the ontic rather than how does he make that connection between the ontic and then goes on to talk about how that creates ontological violence?
I would think that he made the assumption about the ontological blackness after a series of studies, not just him creating this idea of social death or ontological blackness. He didn't create. Okay. So, you also read a piece of Fanon. Oh, I think you might have it there. Fanon evidence that talks about how his black.
What do those studies say? I want to like hear some more.
Okay, well, we can go look that
Yeah,
up.
we should do some research
Google
on our
right
own to
now.
actually find
That's
out.
also what Dr. Shanera
educate
evidence
me,
is talking about. These are questions that you should already understand what studies you know. Talks
me,
about
please?
our Shanera evidence talks about how you should already be looking in our side of the library, and the problem is
I'm
in
sorry,
your
but
question.
I don't know if that answers my question. Can you answer the
I mean,
connection
like-
between the ontic and the ontological death argument?
You asked me what studies he has looked at. I don't know all the studies
that's
he's
fine.
done.
Why is removing the embargo, which is a concession to the international community, an example of why a hegemony of whiteness?
What?
Why is the example of the Cuban embargo, which is a concession to the international community, an example of a
One, it
hegemony
is not a
of whiteness?
concession. That Rodriguez evidence is fantastic on. This is why I told the judges to literally flow the warrants. It talks about when we focus on state-centered violence and how it needs to go into international affairs. That does not solve the problem. Rather, we're saying that we should be solving the domestic warfare that is happening.
Action. So once again, why is that?
Do you want to eat your ethos moment? Do you want me to answer this question?
Do I want to eat my ethos moment?
Yes.
I don't know what that means. Okay, that's fine. What does voting negative signify?
What is what?
What does voting negative signify? Does it like signify like a rejection of the state as a whole?
It's
We're
not just necessarily
voting
a
that-
rejection of the state, it's a rejection of certain scholarship that we produce within the debate community.
So
Our alternative was that we should
is it
abandon the
possible
notion
for the
of
state
freedom.
to be redeemable, or is no?
That's not what we're within our claim. We're saying that the only thing we can do is create these type of pedagogy that our Rodriguez evidence talks about to transform ourselves.
And it
So why is
depends on
rejecting the app key?
for whom is the state.
Right, because we're saying that the scholarship of the 1AC was a problem. The fact that you're starting with the state and saying it should be
Okay,
our focus.
is it possible for the state to do something?
I clearly just said it depends on where you're speaking from. For an African American, we will advocate that no, right?
Right.
For a white person, yes, you can reform.
I mean,
Wait, so it depends on your social location in retrospect?
it's not just.
it would depend on how you look at it. We're saying coming from our perspective as being two black students, we say no, the state has never done anything positive in retrospective to our lives.
I'll take some breath.
Ariel, still using the paper ad?
Oh, is it okay if I read this through before I get back?
I did not read that bulletin card right there.
This one?
Yes.
Okay, so just this stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This card and that Rodriguez card, that is also right there. It starts here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, stop breath.
I've got 904.
Yeah, Sam. Yeah, sure. This is a the next section at least. Escaping easy also. All right, the order case with an overview, I guess. Then, oh yeah, you might need him. Okay, we'll wait for a little bit. Okay. The order is case. Probably a separate sheet for printer, and then a critique.
That is.
Oh, okay.
Has like impact notes for you.
Did you pardon me the flash?
Alright.
How about?
Did you pardon me the flash?
Oh, probably not. You're in bed, then?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, ready?
Dave conceived the thesis of the affirmative hegemony is going to stabilize his world through alliance commitments to currents and economic ties that is his restaurant program prefer arms we control trying to science the question now. There are links missing both the plan binds to an axis towards multiple institution reforming steps toward militarism towards a policy of cooperation that is exploited independently. The transition is where social science proves that there's an incentive for states to take the only gradual shift of multi-level solves the inevitable transition towards going equal that is Walton and Wolford that must now group all the preemption arguments. No, we didn't preempt specifically with red defense until the one to see truth claims we advanced. There's no possible broad line to the same truth. Now this isn't targeted at tailing rewrite arguments specific for the opponents we face in every debate. We also don't
don't read the same Africans Green Hill or GPS we read whatever we think gives us the best chance of winning in particular round. Now, group all the link armies or references that while the state might have historically done racist thing that does not predetermine every future interaction, shooting that is so creates a witch hunt mentality which of histories old. So the U.S. economic engagement with Latin America isn't inherently racist, so it depends on what we do. The Salvatore insists I would like to question whether the idea of Latin America emphasize the idea influence of race in making Latin America now the idea of Latin America behaving fifth race is not entirely accurate. Racial expenditure on central and indispensable to the happening between the rich Anglo-American disorganized Spanish American differences between historical experience and attracting attention. Most commentators settling the North South teachers the U.S. was a good teacher. He told not need not be black or brown to see that in the classroom. Now the framing debate. Oop, there we go. Through all the Palisade Valley, hypothetical implementation of the plan scenario planning is good. One theoretical development, identifying hypothesis and analyzing research avoids cognitive bias and presentation of the scenarios allows us to predict if something is a good or bad idea. Second is policy making scenario planning is a tool for that allows robust defense and pedagogy rather than speculation, teaching debaters how to apply theories to policy conditions along engaged industry because we can hold the state responsible for actions must be taken. Now, prefer marketing and junior third is specific to low probability but large magnitude events such as nuclear warnings, direct effects on higher. Now, our planning is unique. That's planning and junior third political science often actively seek to respond to speculative aspects of planning supported because data simply does not yet exist as no more represent the study of corporate speculation makes possible to the data that is available. Now, assuming the ballot represents anything else other than a decision about who won the debate, questions that are moving debaters come like actors whose performance are codified to appease the academy. That's Gunnell 86 political methods that is talking about rather than practicing academic fantasy memory, which effort in connection with objects in 30 self-described academic writers, watching like actors, unnecessarily set his audience within limits of avant-garde production that would never endanger status actors, people the has beyond the role. Expected even though I was considered probably the actors caught up with the academic that come to believe that the play is the most brilliant actors more noble and never than the actual practice of life and that purity must maintain political myths. One thing for mythical politics is you know they have lost such a society world as square printed by others saying insecure as members of the truth must display the gesture that fear contamination paranoia surpassed by the blind faith of those who believe that their forms transform the lives of those whom they come to contact their theater so much part of life that any distinction is forced and analytic. Many are just actors vain, conservatively acquired from the coaches for a few of these scenes are a vehicle for higher purpose. Society reserves the theater for their activity, putting them safely away where anything they say because everyone knows that just play contract has prescriptive in this languages to continue to ensure impose. Now, friendly, should we not exclude any of their education arms? We really think that including the state within any discussion policy debate is a productive activity. Now, the critique proper. The critique is not mutually exclusive with the plan. While we do not perform the same politics as the one, we can still endorse them as productive. Now, our permutation is the best combination of advocacy. The exclusionary policies of whiteness should not be rejected but reformed. That is Sullivan. And live categories like whiteness to limited white people should work to transform whiteness into anti-racist category. Whiteness should be a rehabilitated rather than discarding whiteness as racial category violent exclusion. One might think that white people need to distance themselves rather than ignore whiteness. A lot of unconscious habits of white privilege proliferate. White people need to bring this whiteness as much conscious word as possible so they can try to change what it means to attempt to become really cultivated. This white person ignores how race and reason and reforms have not to eliminate privilege by allowing white privilege to unchecked length of their life. So the action humanity tends to person not reduce privilege to increase. These changes can reduce the racial privilege. She must resist the challenge. She steers herself to instead figure out what it can mean for her to live her own life as a racialized person. One with no longer ignore attemptively the whiteness. They can ask how work for racial justice faced with the basic responsibilities of white person people of admitting whiteness unlike white supremacy make of it whatever they will can be mitigated by white for white people need to educate newcomers of whiteness almost all explicit reflection of writing on how to raise white children uneducated by the groups such as the Ku Klux Klan educating white children rather whites need and should not be educating them to be supremacist whiteness helps to restore racial difference without treating people of various races wholly alien to each other. People see whiteness with foreign when it's by dabbling in other cultures the hero taken appreciation of diverse not sensitized through and avoidance of white privilege appreciation plurality covered vehicle for ontological expenses to whiteness to values and thus French actually covers conservative different races but people in the same meaning of their different human beings need to create conceptual social political construction including individuals whose ideas give their lives meaning purpose the theory of racial justice that ignores this will not be effective practice. Now the alternative is definitely not able to solve especially when the panel is full of 3 white judges. There's no reason why voting negative is able to resolve any of the impacts outlined in the one now civil society should not be on repair that shall be instead of the conservative forms of black national these issue of political purpose and no social transformation please to be dealt destructive and racial justice that African American forms self-reliant competing so making further advance on these civil racial reform and reject those forms of conservative anti-black person not incorrigible and blacks and work to help to affect meaningful social change or social injustice in our society that should can be corrected by organized collective action on or St. Paul's society faces zero problems of racial injustice that correcting requires concerted action part of the conservative citizens of their government strand of black nationalism compatible with core values and liberal equal citizenship respect to individual autonomous democratic government the basic right to freedom to tolerance different conceptions of the equal opportunity employment and education employment and guaranteed minimum standard of living but a black nationalist to be system some of the ideas will have to be rethought in a way I conceive the viable form of black nationalism one that is compatible with political liberalism. Now analyzing the object at the ontological level reapplies the closure of colonialism makes pessimism as a self-fulfilling prophecy that is proven by the one who cross where they cannot even explain how Wilderson arrived at any of his claims. That's Hudson inserted by philosophical fatalism of Wilderson struck with the closure of colonialism is absolute whiteness and blacks are carried by a postulate women to prejudice collective attitudes how the position of concept of white identity may be universal is conscious meeting of the exclusion not determined what's a form of framework deciding that they're in the same is political the modes of the undertow deciding advance that fatalism might have see what is colonialism to the ontological division but this relation really on the side of the ontological identities may be so sentimented that it becomes difficult even to identify the separation but it's not fully the void of black people functions the ultimate substance of the restrictive finding which all sociality said to right blood get lost of specificity of colonialism. I refuse the characterization of blackness as an ontological death by sort of the life of the face the structures of domination blackness exceeds its own objectification the framework is totalizing and historically inaccurate. That's Brand 12. Blackness were under contestation being produced movement and we never let themselves refuse active persist. The question is, this is the paraontological relation of blackness. Is this a pressure rising its own red objects can persist the black objects by running itself inaudible and reckless tradition which objects make themselves black not operate as it is not ontological, it's not within intellect, not social death, no matter how much energy invested render these claims to blackness is pretty which lives in the action may not be recognized as black be denied. It's like the black object lives in sound and makes the sound stands the common part of blackness but to be within black cities over what blackness is still being contested is necessary to continue thinking about how blackness escapes and next insistence on the centrality of social death reifies Western social sciences, resulting in reductionism and inability to see forms of sociability that's brown and that woman that's the dying the sailor described death and not record ruining the capitalism of a woman out of the hole that had the corpse lowered into the water in the present with words that generally appear in females of sorts about funerals like it because discussions have been improperly likely to fail self-explanation and development within slave fetus not steward ways that we write about slavery present evidence of African cultural retention evidence and dehumanization all attempt to withstand oblivion to make social media outlet for English to death right and able to express social values articulate what made them unique seen typifies that people have been pronounced or slated have often made a social world out of death and so this false is mind and social media politics of history social death become a general definition of this forgotten social death. The theoretical abstract may not describe the experience of the enslaved so much to produce some to at least come to not an agentless direction provides immediate logic to deliver so the experience of enslavement and the struggles that produce transformation social death fade within tradition more local deviation then to the world protected people of black communities conform to social science aim to discover universal regardless of the time and place. Institutions are inevitable and engaging in institutional commitments to entrap us and severely circumscribe the scope of our agency. Studying, understanding, and reforming those institutions is the only way to prevent unchecked abuses of power and atrocities like the Holocaust, as Marchi and Fernandez and Thurgate. Everyday practice involves institutional work to regulate populations to transfer resources, human release of oppressive work to get us to different from how relevant are the sources of present day organization of institutions today may still be categorized by humans being political, dehumanized, terrorists, and treated with violence institute and senses include genocide, personally Guantanamo work camps, forced labor trafficking, and overseas. Against her common thing that effort to shatter human capacity to resist clubs individual willingly subject themselves however resistance is occurred and important is the parameters of resistance set by institutions of repression resistance may isolate from organized individual the spectrum provides a strong reminder that we need to consider how the institutional order shape the options and lives of people inhabiting the anti-oppressive work the Holocaust present absurd into the modern capitalist order institutions apprentice of thought, action and organization study offers new angles to Europe by creating, maintaining, and transforming institutions and history and change social science that need to take a proper matters to the community which we live in ways that matters marketing for debate and reorientation. It also central that sees key question of the social structure that prevent us and inhabit them from becoming people feel like capacity that has been taken to study point discussing how they may transform institutions. We believe it does such studies to offer solid ground for helping and constructing new institutional orders. We need to study what institutional orders should be pursuing for each and every human being.
Alright. What economic ties does the U.S. have with black youth like Rebuttals died because you make this claim that hegemony is good because of the economic ties that causes alliances?
I'm not really sure what your question is.
You say that alliances are formed because of the economic ties.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking about people who are actually in America. If I'm not providing the United States federal government with any economic benefit, why am I allied to them?
Why are you an ally to the United
Yes.
States? Because you're a citizen of the United States.
How
and
do you know
according to
this?
privileges and
Like,
such.
how are you making this assumption about my life? Or let's say black youth in general. How are you making the assumption that all black youth are indeed
Well,
citizens?
I'm not applying it to all black youth.
But you're saying that the idea of being an ally to the federal government is something that we will work with. An ally is a partnership.
Well, our point
Right?
is that alliances are with foreign countries, i.e., we ally with India.
So we should
China.
only be allies with foreign countries and not
No,
our
obviously
domestic
we should be
citizens.
allies
We have
with
to
other
define that
What
they're
do you
actually
do
going to work
that
for
would
one.
need to indicate all three of those judges as being white?
Wait, what?
How
What
do you
gives
define
that
them?
ability?
Like you have defined all of our three of judges as white.
Right.
How
do you know that
how do
shit?
you have that ability to do that?
Wait, are you saying that we are white?
No, we're not saying that. You have said these
Just
three
making sure.
people, these three people right here
Yeah.
are all white. That is what you have said. How have you defined them as? How have you come to this conclusion?
It's a question of ontic versus ontological.
No, I just want to know how you decided that Christina Talunga is white.
I mean,
You just looked at her and
You
you
just
assumed that.
decided that she was white? Like you made that
Yeah,
decision
sure.
for her?
Okay.
Okay, I'm
So
going to go
argue
on
that
now.
people who are
You said
born
you
with
want to
black
talk about
dark
studies. Your
skin have
Thank you.
ontological
You want to talk
status
about
as
studies. Your
you say.
Salvatore
Can you
evidence.
stop talking,
I'd like
please?
to ask you a question. Your Salvatore evidence says that Latin America identity is not accurate. You tagged it as Latin America. You tagged it as Latin America and economic engagement is not inherently racist. Can you cite me the studies where it talks about how it's not racist?
well, it's a study by Salvatore who analyzes the relationship.
Right, but I'm looking in the warrants of the card and it just talks about Latin America as an identity is necessarily not accurate, but you...
No, I
How
think you're
a little bit
mischaracterizing
differently.
the card. Our evidence indicates that the relationships
All right,
between
how many
colonialism-
black judges have you
Well,
had
I guess
judge
if you want-
I'd like to go on now. You've answered the question for me, thank you.
Okay.
What black judges have you had judge you this tournament?
I mean, not this tournament specifically, but
Okay,
we've
that's
had
fine.
Ms. J in the past.
Is
a
your
lot of
model
times.
up?
We really enjoy her because she voted us up on intrinsicness
I
as an
understand.
RBI.
I appreciate your answer.
So
Oh.
she's a pretty good judge.
All right, can you explain to me the framework argument?
The framework argument is
Yes.
that we should be able to hypothesize and test the hypothetical enactment of certain scenarios.
So
before
is your
policy.
argument that the criticism is not that we're not testing the 1AC?
No, we just think that it's a better pedagogical exercise to study how IR relates in hypothetical scenarios.
Why?
Our Monken and Junio evidence indicates that when we are able to test these scenarios, it allows for us to formulate better policies.
So if
Even if we don't formulate policies, it's good for our education as.
Who's R?
How have y'all determined what is good for us?
What?
Why do you have the ability to determine what is good for me?
Well, we don't think that it's good for you.
You just said that it's good for our education as in a shared value. How are you making the decision that it's something that is going to be beneficial for me?
Because our Monken and Junio evidence indicates that education is applicable to everybody.
Can I take that evidence?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Are you gonna take a minute?
Sorry, yeah, you're sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
What was the approximate call design to?
I think it was just like on case or on critique.
Okay.
Wait, I didn't understand your question.
It was a more card. It said no root cause, preferred approximate cause.
I don't know if I read that actually.
Okay.
Oh, there's one right there.
Yeah.
I got the same.
I kind of figured. I was like, you probably have right.
He's giving a shout out. I want to give him a shout out. Where did you get that set? Yeah, it feels delivered mechanism.
I'm not getting this.
Use pressure.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have money.
Oh.
I appreciate it. Alright. For a diamond. I apologize.
The order is framework debate. It's the cave with an overview. It's like carded, so I would recommend like a new shooter.
I'm sorry, I just can't.
Okay, sorry.
I know it's like this disparate
Oh,
issue going on.
Okay, it's the framework debate,
Yeah.
and then it's the cave would add a sheet of paper for an overview because it's like actually carded and it requires it.
You get a new sheet of paper.
You sucked it. I do it on hold.
Oh, you're actually. Keep that in mind.
Is everybody good? The act of actually reading Burke is targeting killing the same way that the seated national champ Corey Johnson as well as Amina Ruffin was targeting kill for literally being black excellent. Aaron Hardy was literally able to write articles from his white position and critiquing black excellence because they did not adhere to white norms. The problem is that the act of reading framework is a gratuitous violence against our bodies inside of the debate community, which probably means that you need to evaluate gratuitous violence that happen within the debate community before you actually evaluate whether things like hegemony can actually prevent extinction for bodies of color. Furthermore, they say that the role of violence is a hypothetical imitation of an actual plan in the first place. But I really think that probably means that the ballot goes to the negative because per the one in secret sheet, we already in fact that hypothetical implementation of that actual plan is not against thinking in the first place. Furthermore, the role of ballot is both for the best team that performs the methodology based on anti-black is the net benefits to this is the generic reading evidence that I will get to later on the full that says we need new forms of scholarship so we don't just regurgitate the same hegemonic scholarship that actually causes this type of violence upon our bodies in the first place. And the first argument makes theoretical development, but I feel like as long as we are producing new scholarship, then that means the generic reading evidence already assumes this type of development. They speak of, they say policy making, but we are literally critiquing the fact we are literally critiquing policy making. All policy making is not good policy making. If we are reading the link to the criticism, which I will do that very later, the problem is that the policy making they are actually trying to promote is that anti-black policy making that we are actually trying to reject. The first is to say that their plan is uniquely anti-black, and that's what it uniquely is. Our argument specific is that the one they want to see is strength in an anti-black position that literally ignores the subjectivity of the same. Now the last argument they make is that specifically that assume that something will happen means that the ballot is something more than just the ballot. It actually destroys our movement, but the one to see is not an actual movement. It's actually a move away, which is distinctly different. Just a move away from hegemonic conversations like the one to see, which means that to vote negative, we don't have to win the fact that we're trying to start a movement because we are not actually starting a movement in the first place. They say that they are just talking about international policies, but the contemporary international relations discourse is a white discipline constructed around the amnesia of the question of race, using a strategy of containment to pressure the unthinkable and to constitute a substitute truth rather than actually expose the partially variable. Knowledge becomes a stimulus act of discourse, and concealment race serves as a crucial epistemic silence around which discipline is written on the coherence. To remember international relations, one needs to forget international relations. To remember international relations, we must seek out of international relations discourse repremises, hides, excludes, and conceals, and permanently closes all the avenues of inquiry. This is Lucretia 2K1. Contemporary art of discourse in the current is constituted by display, constructing around that means and question about the race and the person as necessary to give us both the relationship to dominate as well as human society as well as constituting the very ground of community such as I substitute, choose themselves to bring their sense of pretty much largely variable knowledge as simultaneously active and disclosing as well as conceiving by upon discourse that actually justifies the transgression of Gentile as well as population of so-called New World enslavement of the active mobilization of the ancient discipline as well as our natural giant church and same substitute, being sure that actually when the existence of least part of variable, it also seems that all questions with white discipline in the first place trying to contain are not only most by exclusion, they are also taken to the form of representation of the identity displayed by our discourse on only issues such as terrorism, third world immigration, spread of infectious diseases such as AIDS as well as outdoor viruses and the first illegal drugs of refugees, the return of their home, and learn the other is not come to a surprise that there has been a lack of critical commentary of the white supremacy mentions like but beneath the surface of what has taken to be legitimate political field, so that in the middle they see that there are dreaded outsiders and the white republic are also produced and reproduced. Once again, we have to begin the long and rigorous process about thinking of the nation perhaps just because we have to ensure society eviction power actually might have the type of truth in the right throughout the world, not the overview. The key outweighs in terms of society has felt bodies are marked out of the war framing simply because the slave it started at the humanism of the others, the opinion of the murder of these slaves. That's why when you see the evidence, this discrimination manifests itself through policies named the justice and equality light. You want to see the affirmative optimism of society to actually enact the plan. See how it's the same rationality, the equality institution, racist implication of the plan in the first place. Now that turns against means to try to for pessimism. Civil society is founded upon the slave master relationship that exports and inlays and black body that causes duties by the reformers measure only see the way for whiteness is what is in it. This will have to say black inflation of circulation rate, the word until the legal within that 26 since back there actually there are benefits of 100 FBS progressive to form content program the reference something known as stage elevation something whereby the subject disposition drop the calculations between the so praying low and labor the imagery or saying still like 9% to middle pass no and then we're no off like the same government something will take as well as one but anti in the position against which uniting something to maintain something we're more interpreted slave is not more for the matter thing generally this out of our preparation open to violence line by line. We think that is something they can see that should not bring evidence. This is literally saying that you are too out there, bring it back in here. Here is the kicker. They can win the fact that the entirety of the one is good and talking about how Jimmy is good, but our argument is that is only regurgitating the same scholarship. Think about it. We are in this hotel that literally used to be a freaking plantation and a colonial. See, the way that we are actually framing our conversation specifically in this debate wrong, it specifically matters. Now, here is more evidence. Additionally, we have to understand that debate is a microcosm of larger civil society, even though none of their policies actually get passed through Congress, and none of the impacts actually really occur as a result of the violence signing act or the knowledge they produce as have an effect on black bodies and should be held to accountable for such. The kind of debate, the proper spectral discussion in which the slaves and enunciation never can really be weighed. This is Dr. Woodis in 2014. I want you to know that I'm not about to single out the word of college debate, but as a anti-black constitution, institution, or race, those who know my work being that I believe the word is big plantation of the past, as well as got in college debate. We have to believe that the world of debate in there in general can be reforming and transforming, although well-meaning liberal people engage in some recent national law, well-settled dialogue. The truth I'm talking about is something more comprehensive than the narrow requirements of judging who they do not want to debate the 12 years of slave house to understand that black enunciation cannot be recognized and incorporated into the global factor of human enunciation. The narrative or the slave is not argued all the time about what experience and cause. These are historical still in this. Martin Carter still in this. They say that the one is not mutually exclusive with the one but they say that it's also not the same policies. You just double turn yourself. If the one and the one are different forms of policies, that means that they cannot actually cooperate each other. The permutation so often that means that you kick out unenforceable. Negative case are furthermore the performance is the fluidity of whiteness. The way that white society the one can actually reform itself a bit is how the one shows the way that whiteness is able to maintain itself and call things like anti-black in the first place. Furthermore, the claims are acts of disadvantage. So point A is what both things evidence specific says that non-black is psychological, which means that no action, whether it is hegemony or multilateralism, would actually reverse that. Subway B is the what's some 10 evidence here. Inclusionary circle civil society never really include blacks because it's found on the contradiction to it. Now they say they say that white institutions should be reformed, but this evidence not actually to take into account the inability that slaves actually have to reform the institution. This assumes that we have the actual subjectivity rather than actually being the object to actually reform institutions. Now here is the whole what is a reformance to this. They say the alternative cannot solve in front of white judges. We think that it's really messed up that you visually identify the judges as white. This turns the arguments visual identification to objectify this the upright speed which relies on anti-black and Johnson, and I see the rest of the country makes one of visual observation, classifying and running categorized by other, based on the visual input of person nowhere, the environmental interaction with that person being categorized, the person primary, categorized a little, process of categorization, the person's racial, identification, social, constructive, social, living by running, conservation, the right to the right of the all psychological observation. Furthermore, they say the civil society is not beyond repair, and political liberalism can happen, but there are two sub-points. Someone is about both things, the evidence. Even if we can't reform societies, the one is acts as a mode of resistance, so that we can actually knock us out of the society. Point B, the one is the reason why society can never really be reformed because anti-blackness cannot just go away since the liberals have happen. Point C, they literally ignore the way the positionality of the state. We do not have the opportunity to actually engage these arguments in the first place. They say that we can't explain Wilson's theories, but we have literally said that he literally wrote off of his past experience. You can't explain all the theories or their past experience. Pure authors in the first place. Now, they also bring forward to evidence that says that our shit is historically incorrect, but you probably need to do some history research because our one is literally based off the thesis of the middle passage, and that is correct. They say that our psychological level can never really solve what that is the Global 13 evidence. They say that they say that our argument only reaches by things like Western social sciences. Well, first off, the Brown evidence is horrible. It's talking about slaves having free wills on slave ships. It's even a reason to reject the more of the 1AC evidence only focuses on social sciences, was retrenching that Western notions of social science that never really include slaves. They say the institutions are never will. That is really true. That means that the re-bring the evidence becomes an impact to the 1AC because we should change the scholarship that we are actually having inside those institutions.
Can I get the flashlights, by the way?
Yeah. Oops. Sorry. Alright. How does our framework exclude black epistemology?
What?
How does our framework exclude the sort of knowledge production?
It's more or less that it's a form of targeting and killing. The ability for you to say that this is how the debate should be implemented, and if it's not implemented like
How
this,
have you said that
then
this
it's
is
not.
the way that the debate can go down?
The whole
Where have you
concept of
made the
framework,
exclusive
it's like
claim?
the debate round should be only viewed like this. If it's not viewed like this, that's so like basically if you win your framework, our cake can't be evaluated. We're saying that that is problematic. That's
Why
targeting
our
and killing
framework can
certain
your critique
arguments.
not be evaluated?
What?
Why does our framework exclude?
Why else would you read? Okay, let me ask. Why did you read framework?
Because it's a defense for pedagogy.
Okay, our argument is that that type of defense of pedagogy is targeting and killing, right? Favoring
Well,
one
yeah,
form of
I'm
like
confused about the
pedagogy.
interlink between that claim and the claim that that somehow jumps to targeted killing.
Framework is like, look, we need to be talking about whether or not we should actually implement a hypothetical whatever by the federal government.
Right, and
because key things like theoretical development, policy making, and other bullcrap. If you don't do that, then that means the case should not be evaluated.
All right,
Our
you bring
argument
up
is
these
that is a form
examples of how
targeting,
this
killing,
used to be a
certain scholars.
plantation and that the debate community has been racist in the past.
Thank you for
Well, the
repeating
very
that.
fact that this is no longer a plantation proves that some things
To
can
you,
still
it's no
change.
longer a plantation. To you.
So what is the distinction?
The distinction is that words in our evidence literally, like he's literally talking about debate, you should probably read the evidence, conceptualizes the world as a plantation, which means that no matter where we go, even if this is not a plantation, it's still a plantation.
I guess that leapfrogs into my next question. How does Wilderson decide who is ontological? Or actually, even a better question, how does Wilderson assign that value to everyone else?
He doesn't assign that value to everyone else. He just literally, he basically did a, like, based off of his experiences living inside
Based
of the world,
off of his
he made a
experiences.
theory of social death that he
So
literally,
it's based off of
it's
his
him trying to
experiences? How
rationalize
do you
the
know
world.
that his experiences are related
Sorry?
to everyone else?
Sorry? Explain.
Okay, so if it is based off of Wilderson's experience, how can we then jump and apply that to everyone else?
The same way that your 1AC authors can base their experience with hegemony and apply it to everyone else. Wilderson specifically, historically analyzes the way that black people have been treated in society and the things like the Middle Passage, and theorize that through issues of like social death.
How can we theorize that these historical issues...
Not we, Wilderson did that. You and Wilderson are the same people.
Alright, that's fine too. Wilderson. How does Wilderson jump from analyzing a single historical instance, the Middle Passage, and then say that that is the predetermined factor in structuring all of our social interactions?
It's not just the Middle Passage. He analyzes like things that are happening like right here, right now.
Right.
And
Well, my question is, how do we use historical...
Robin Wilderson literally analyzed policy debate and applied that theory of like social death.
My question is, how do we apply these historical examples to an overall system of thought or ontology? How do you make a leap from a single historical experience to an overall system of thought?
You're not listening. You're listening. You're hearing what you want to hear. It's not just an analysis of the Middle Passage. It's an analysis of how, for example, George Zimmerman can shoot Trayvon Martin and maybe
right. But how does that lead you to make overall generalizations from that?
It's a way for people of color to theorize why the things that happen to them happen to them. It's not some type of all-knowing overarching study.
This saved us 1 hour quarter. Thanks. Yep. It's going to be the case today.
Do you want the flash drive?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll just get the
that's it.
Thank you. Piece of this card?
Maybe? Something like
it's on your computer.
Oh, alright. Here we go.
Alright. Yeah, it is. Alright. Yep.
Yeah, it really is.
It's really hot. Okay. They said we continue to hedge is good, but hedge is good only if you're an ally to the federal government. That's a cross-eyed argument that I was advancing. They made the claim that the United States federal government is going to be allowed in international relations because they have economic ties with the federal government. They have not answered the question of how we should be personalized and protectionalized in places like America. Rodrigo has advanced the question of how we should be addressing like the domestic warfare that we have high studies that are already happening targeted to black and Hispanic youth as a bobo evidence. Now they haven't answered this question. The problem is that we're not an ally to the federal government for reason above them. They're having to talk about how the federal government is not inherently racist. No one doesn't talk about how they said the legal system is not inherently racist, but they haven't answered the claim of how things like stand your ground along Islam first policing policies in the United States is not inherently racist. Our bobo evidence talks about how how they're already targeting black and Hispanic youth just because of the fact that they have already overcome. They said that economic engagement with Latin America is not inherently racist. But yes, the card is one Alex Hudson specifically talked about how Latin America is not being constructed as an identity. It's not actually accurate. She called for that out of the wrong. They're using Alex Hudson. They said for the pre-issue argument, they said no, look, we're not actually trying to target you yet. You are. That's the core evidence. Corey evidence. Ravon residents he did enough of the work. He said the hedge is good because it stabilizes the world. But notice now the academic argument transforms those who oppose it into racially inferior other. These claims are rooted in the racist model of knowledge and production. They are the new version of the white man's verdict tablet 2003. The purpose of power is sustaining in an orderly world. This is about racism. The images of the unruly war rate recycle stereotypes that racial inferiority from earlier colonial discourses about race that are incapable of governing themselves. They share a teleological narrative of inevitability that in America is an apotheosis of history. The universal can manifest itself through threatening violence. He said that the link is missing to both the U.S. The plan is multilateral. The hegemonic stability theory is wrong and racist. Lutz 2009. Immense project is serving the world global service fueled by mythic structures support for the foreign bases on the idea that war is necessary. The racism acts the notion that the modern and not coincidentally white nations were responsible to control more chaotically violent others through violence. The racial idea made it possible for people to support colonial extremists through the underpin the nuclear-oriented and successfully provide information for the start of U.S. basing systems. They said the political simulation is valuable for the deliberation, but they haven't answered the question of who it's empowering. For our Rodrigo evidence talked about how until we addressing like the domestic warfare that's happening to people of black and Latino youth, it can never actually be empowering for them. They said the historical data proves transition in war, but you're not actually calling anything to change. They said the historical data will only prove that there will only be war, but our evidence already takes into account these kinds of the left and capitalist evidence that I just read about. Simply talk about why these theories are inherently racist. They're trying to build these security threats and construct them as the reason why the United States federal government needs to act in this government. Now I'm going to go back to the Rodriguez evidence. I told you to follow the warrants because the card is really, really good, but maybe I wasn't slow enough to want to see because I saw a couple of you looking at me. I'm going to read a couple parts of it because it's really, really important. How are we able to accommodate and culturally and politically and normalize the strategic, explicit, and openly racist technologies of state violence that effectively, socially neutralize and frequently liquidate entire nearby populations of our people, given that ours are the very same population that have historically struggled to survive and overthrow such classical structures of domination as colonialism, frontier quests, racial slavery, and other genocides? The Rodriguez evidence is begging the question of why the embargo was placed in the first place. Until we address things like the what the alternative is saying that we need to abandon the notion of free will and go into the root cause claim of the affirmative. They have not answered any of these claims. They also haven't addressed the bomb key evidence. The TOC had misresolved criticism of the one issue. Their affirmation of the repeal of the embargo is a policy that is unquestioned and unexamined to see the way and interact with our individual, meaning the cross-check was given. They couldn't answer how we were allies to the federal government. We haven't provided any deterrence or given any economic time. They try to say that we're allies because we're citizens, but they have continued the bobo. Evidence talks about why even if we are citizens, they haven't defended the reason why we are already being targeted and killed. Go to the Fanon evidence. It talks about how our blackness is there. Dark and unarguable premise of these stereotypes of Negroes as savages, brutes, and illiterates, making no exception for the refined manners, knowledge, or understanding that it is generally explained that the color person that we hope to soon appear the unreasoning hatred of one race for another. The most obvious outward manifestation of race has been the criterion of people who are to the resolve is to defend self, is to intend to rationalize the world that and show the notion that white is being mistaken. The fact that they're saying that the impact factor is something that needs to be solved by the federal government taking the action is the problem. We're saying that the idea that you are resolving these problems is the problem in the first place. That is why the alternative or the criticism specifically talk about how we need to abandon the notion of freedom. We need to stop trying to be the whites who they haven't answered. They haven't extend the what?
The Omladi evidence extension already happened.
Extend the Omladi evidence extension that's already happened probably takes out all the impacts of the 1AC. It talks about 25 to 100 million people have already died dramatically, like the African slave trade, but that's not an impact claim for the affirmative. Probably means that try or die flips today.
All right, we have. I wrote it down somewhere. We have 9 and 4.
I know. I didn't
stay in the other room.
I didn't know it was this high.
We chose to move. I was just in here highlighting it. I didn't know they were coming over.
Keisha.
Okay, I didn't know it was this high. I thought it was there.
I'm about to get some water.
No, they went to okay. They just said it like right after, like in between our social gatherings.
I know the green ones.
there's one card on that.
Oh, okay.
The chocolate.
Can you have the flashlight?
Yeah.
Did you clean this off? Did you clean this off?
They said they were working on the AC, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that by the middle of the 2 hour, it's gonna be like,
This one?
the heck, these people just take things all the time.
Actually, take like 5 more seconds. You should make it either. You don't need to either piss them off or you can go. I already have that. You don't need to read this card.
It's good to have.
It's not necessary. Yeah. It's 9 more seconds. 6:35.
Oh, thank you.
Don't think.
Try not to.
Hold on, you need to open up the book.
Sorry, y'all. I had to find a water bottle. We got knocked things over.
Where's case? Framework. Overview page. Critique problem.
Give me half a second. I forgot to do one.
How much time did y'all have left?
6:46.
Or sorry, 6:35.
No,
Just like
6:35. 9 seconds.
10 more seconds.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, I forgot to do the thing.
Or are you using this? I can get you sheet, though. He said case framework, okay?
I'm opening the old one.
Okay, I'm good.
Alright, everyone's good? The plan is a justification for U.S. action. Multilateral pricing conditions for increasing value of de-escalation of pressure. There are no sequencing questions good for the people who inhabit the international sphere. There are infinite number of explanations for how events would look. Looking at how violence is proximate contra session, even if you conclude the plan is not directly good for those who are ontologically against pricing predictions for equality behavior with the U.S. attorney in the past. That is not a reason why cooperation is not a good method for the ascertain stating is not inherently racist arguments beyond the cave. Our Latin American voting blocks arguments not in conscious sense. The rest of the regional states and one of the U.S. is living bargain. Not sure how what the explanation retarding was, and then one or no. You two in our extrapolation. Their critique of hedges all about the status quo. It's about unilateral militarism being bad because things causes intervention into other countries, which self-defeats the population, causes racism. system with the plan change the decision calculates and running numbers prefer historical data might be from what at least with the science is pretty hard for besides new evolution trends in psychology when she slows down and one of her quotes according to literally about the status quo sounds not actually because of the applicants. This question the status quo versus the alternative which is now worse social chance generous transition worse we can be out to the for the government. It's a question of choice or Sarah planning or enter the last argument that will be on framework. The role of the ballot is to determine whether the act itself is a good idea. It should not be an ethical referendum. We should not be held to what Aaron Hardy say. Debate is not literally death, and framework is not literal targeting killing. Framework is an academic deliberation about your method for producing scholarship there, and an analogy to apply to the actual death and gratuitous violence going on outside the room. It makes it impossible to effectively response to oppression and context. Or arguments that debate provides a space where we can engage in deliberation, discussion about the best way to resolve anti-blackness, opportunity to engage in that discussion that we are having this very minute. Disproves our argument proves the necessity of having debates about practices. And right now, we agree that white supremacy is bad, but debate is a bad form for maybe you should be using it for policy making. You want to see it's also performance, but it's a test of hyper-testing by institutional policy that's valuable. There's no link to your the role-playing arguments because we don't lose our agency thing that we the government, rather we are assessing a question that the government should take on airplane is good first. It's theoretical development, identifying hypothesis and analysis, research avoids cognitive bias, representation of these scenarios allows us to predict something is good or bad or not. Second is policy making. Scenario planning is a tool for the less robust defense of pedagogies rather than psychology teaching debaters about how to apply theory to policy conditions allows us to engage in standards. That is marketing of junior evidence. This is unique for great power war because the nuclear war lacks empirical verification. We can always wait for something to occur before we actually learn about scenario planning. Like to want to see things sample be used for predicting a certain event before it occurs. To make a junior of a simulation activates agency social actions deliberate projecting and choosing between hypothetical future scenarios, which is that ethical option. That's making a junior of a politics of delusion arguments and impact into your DSRP arguments. Just continue your active rejecting anti-blackness on a radical movement. This radical on a space of meaningful projects by accepting terms like condition of legitimate public discourse or potential revolution of literacy method. In this round is bad. To believe differently, to turn this to a form of active sparkling leads to delusion, torture, agency arguments. That's a juicy gun elements. Now the education argument bias arguments is not relevant because it is not inconsistent with our framework argument. Our first is that education is not biased. Proposing specific reforms is able to overcome the temptations of this political. Only our framework is able to resolve this argument. Now the detachment argument, the doctrine should not repeat revealing case argument does not apply. First, it's not in the context of our form of seeing engagement. Revealing case about writing about anti-racist practices where directed at existing institutional structures. Even not a piece of evidence that says the embargo is in a racist structure. Second, it's double bind. Either the state is never okay to massive assault to take over something is okay, which means what we propose is a perfect instance of that. Second, third is that even if they're corrected by the state, making the observation that it's unethical does not mean that a more ethical and only changing immature structure that produce oppression's viable mode of resistance. Overview. The choice case arguments at the time is glorified state are bad argument. The ultimate mechanism to resolve those institutions. The institutions are utterly benevolent, engaging them are key. Institutional commitments and trappings and severely circumscribe the scope of our agency. However, the only way to prevent unchecked abuses of power trust is by studying, understanding, reforming these institutions. The state doesn't pass to do good. The state is good. There are arguments that this place used to be a colonial place. Used to prove that the state can be good and reform itself. As an example, given the 2-1C, the 4 that took me 2 minutes and the 1C is incredible on this question. Indict the thesis that the United States federal government is inherently racist. The United States federal government should be reformed. The idea that we should reject the entire state is both historically flawed and politically debilitating. Makes it praise on one side and focus on legal society. If you only focus on one negative aspect, then you forget the 13, 14, 15 events result in more social inequality. Their argument creates a witch hunt mentality, which is a conceded term. Case arguments where philosophers are always looking for a subversive ideal for what something is racist, which prevents engaging individuals by a perpetual search for trying to find an individual racist justification for something that is not there. That is a salvatory. So it might be true that we cannot solve all racism ever, but the act of taking one small step in an ethical sense rather than trying to more will be on the permutation debate. The Wilderson card will be answered on the K proper with the anti-Semitic method. Now go to the K proper. My partner misspoke when he said that he thought that our judges were white. He meant that that people who are not born with dark skin inherit political ontology that's attributed towards them, but that's that those who do not agree will be classified as ontologically white, being from a stance of privilege, which is what I tried to quite clarify in cross-ex before I was brutally shut down in cross-ex. We're both in down because their description of the world is backwards, only reifies social death. This impact charts are totalizing assumptions of human nature, using a sweeping generalization about what constitutes blackness. Nevertheless, the subject identifies a black single being, their relationship to the world. They ignore the fact that those ontological objects can and do resist generalization. They resist by rendering self-audible and through radicalism. Blackness is non-ontological, does not equate with social death arguments. They cannot be denied as like you should prefer to see for our evidence, which indicates the methodology from their religious and modern Chandler evidence. It says that they are wrong in the description of history. The one is not a stage of oppression. The trash of the Cuban embargo is one that must be resisted. Once he crosses the truth that the Cuban embargo in a vacuum itself is not a bad policy. The Brown evidence is definitely not. It definitely take out all these arguments on the permutation. You should accept because it's not separate. There are two evidence in the two issues. First, there is no double termings or permutations, both that the state is not reformable, but that your frame of reconciling with the blackness is bad. You create a form of exclusionary politics where the exclusionary policies whiteness should not be rejected, but rather reform. White supremacy is a no, but just trying to reject will be yourself a racist move because it leaves the definition of whiteness up to supremacy. Church or academics, Sullivan have stated they reject the state. There's no way that the United States federal government done in the past things that are wrong. They're not able to reform those things, which means oppression is inevitable.
We have 5:11.
Can we have all of our evidence back?
I think we just have case.
We create this we're trying to the first place and we now forget about the good. What good? Little things like reformism is never really good for bodies of color. The actual line. They can see this as that the permutation is the fluidity of white. That's an independent reason why I should reject them. They can see the fact that also that they said that it was a mistake for you to that you actually visualize the judges as white, but that is not okay. A white person can be like, hey, you nigga, and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. The fact that you said it was already enough for you to vote negative. There are a couple of indications here. Johnson, and evidence says that is what justified George McKinley, Chamber of Martin. The fact that he visualized him as he raised immediately allowed him to shoot him down. That's an independent reason for rejecting. Also, a sin, the fact that the permutations, all the links are disadvantaged to the permutations. Now, I don't actually have to go for the key with an alternative because we are literally saying that our knowledge of the ESRB evidence is our alternative. More what is important evidence specifically in the context of debate, saying that debate is now becoming a implementation of life. We can actually have alternative, most actually engaged in the first because they have also to see the fact that the validity of whiteness is reason to reject them because it's gratuitous violence upon our bodies of color. It's gratuitous violence upon our actual scholarship. The act of permutation is a reason to actually reject them, whether I'm talking there or not.
All right, we have 6:35. love to say that this is
I'm surprised there's not boxes of the shirts in the Hardy basement.
No, maybe. Is it, do you still keep those Spanish people down there? Like walks?
There's just a ton of weird shit in there. The Hardy basement's cursed.
That's an actual there used to be like a speech by Westminster Museum.
They're not in the basement. They just have the like that section.
Because I went down there once. It was like literally.
No, they have some. They have round seats in there.
That's crazy.
You say this over the years.
Okay.
Restaurant having a walk.
Wait until you are.
Backwards, eh?
I was like, it's a magic trick. It's here.
Oh yeah, I'm already just like. Right,
Alright, the order is case, framework, critique.
Does that include the overview?
I guess like I sort of flow the overview is like mixed into the whole critique debate, but
Fine. We'll make it
I'm
work.
sorry.
I already
case,
flowed the same way you did.
framework,
Case.
critique.
You know what? I probably agree. This Metallica.
Okay. Alright. Ready?
The tool is very little answer can either link towards the head racist argument which means their advantage is impact for the alternative also link towards all the racism arguments are from multilateralism is a better structure binds the United States of multilateral institutions which forces cooperation on the United States. They have considered that Germany is the strongest correlation with stability and prosperity for all people globally, which answers all their impact unique as yes, it might be true that black people in the United States are historically disadvantaged. However, that is better than the alternative of transition wars. They've not contested the claim that transition to a world without hegemony's networks that turns all their impacts. This debate should not come down to whether U.S. hegemony is bad, rather should be debated about whether it's better than the alternative. Yes, the United States has done messed up things in the past, but do you think a world with China, Russia, Brazil carving out their own respective spheres of influence using racism and violent taxes is any better? You should work with and try to change evil. You do know other than the evil you can. This is a net benefit to the permutation and also defense of the affirmative under affirming. Now, this seems back unique to this already answered by all the social death armies on the case. We prove that black people aren't in constant antagonism with USFG. That means that all these armies don't matter. They say we can't work with the USFG. That's also answered by the permutation. They say your decision calculus should focus on in-ground violence. However, obviously, if we win our affirmative, it proves that you should evaluate the hypothetical enactment of the plan rather than all these in-ground impacts. They say the U.S. legitimizes racism. All these arguments are all answered. They finally say the visual politics argument that is also on the critique. Now, the framework debate proper. They have conceded the extent of the mocking Judeo evidence, which would be an impact on all their epistemology arguments. Are framing issue. They have conceded the gun elements, which should be which should frame your decision calculus. They have conceded that the epistemology that brain through the ground is no longer unique, but it's rather regurgitated by getting coaches like Krakow by getting coaches like Krakow and other coaches to come and coach. That just means that they're regurgitating the epistemology of their own coaching without introducing any new scholarship into the round.
That's not what I need.
But they've also conceded that they've also considered mocking Judeo evidence, which is an impact on all these epistemology arguments. They have conceded the plan is key to actually developing theoretical justification for all these things by testing whether hegemony is good or bad. In the abstract, it allows for us to develop new ideas around hegemony, which is a way to reconceptualize how hegemony has traditionally been operated. This is also an impact on all their validity. White historians can prove that we can reconceptualize hegemony around the plan. They've also conceded that it's key to more effective policy making. Yes, it might be true that hegemony has been bad in the past, but role-playing the idea that hegemony might be good or might be bad is a way for us to influence policymakers in order to ensure that it's better. Now, they say that international politics are inherently racist. However, if we read the permutation, that is a way to include their epistemology within ours. Also, our uniqueness from obviously take this out. They say that they introduce new scholarship that should be the role of the ballot. However, our role of the ballot is that you should just wait the hypothetical enactment of the plan, which means that this is also key to all of our education office. They say that our framework arguments are equivalent to targeted killing of black scholarship. However, when the permutation proves that affirmative does not necessarily exclude their arguments, it just says that you should include this black epistemology arguments within our own framework. They say the SRB still applies. However, they've conceded that it's completely out of context, not in the context of debate where nor should be applied to this context. Is a question of evaluating whether international relations are good or not. They say the same as never, but they've conceded to a piece of evidence that indicates that while it might be true that we can change how we think about the state, the way that the movements of the press work is determined by the institutions that necessarily compress those things, which means it's much more important to focus on how the state operates rather than how it doesn't operate. Now, the social death arguments, I understand.
This is on the critique, by the way.
I misspoke when I said that I thought our judges were white. My purpose was to clarify what it meant, but he shut it down and wouldn't let me explain. The argument was that people who are with dark skin inherited political ontology that is strictly towards them, but those who could not be classified as ontologically white income stays a privilege. This was explained to one who not dealt with the intruder. We have politics who must understand there's no tie to the trade line. Market dealing debates not literal death and purpose not literal targeted killing. You can see that this analogy trivializes the actual death of gratuitous violence coming out outside the room, which is internally towards all of the alternative solvency arguments. Now, the critique proper. Finally, the social death arguments. When these arguments say the two are completely conceded these arguments, which proves that it is possible for the United States federal government to exist within the permutation. Now, even if you lose every argument in the debate, if we win this indicted the description of the world, this only means you reject every piece of their arguments because it rests on flawed assumptions, means the entire 1 and T is offense for us. The affirmative understanding blackness is static. One thing we all know about black subjects is that they are identifiable to the conditions of the social that we instead use a fluid, constantly redefined explanation. Blackness allows the individual to open to their own form of personal agency, resistance, transcends time, history, and culture. Now, factor. Two ways people are says that attempts to give blackness as static solely means the subject can never be in their relation to the court, which is a politically individual act of personal liberation. They ignore the fact that these people always resist their totalizing characterization of the subject. It is historical and empirical proof that blackness is not ontological. Do not vote on a social that there are indicts every single one of their authors. They also can see the Brown evidence, which turns all their authors by indicting all their authors. He indicts all the authors on point criticism of the way Wilderson has done his study by assuming that it's really an ontological category that it makes a link between the onto category, which is the idea that there was a historical example, and applying that to a gigantic political system. They have no reason why Wilderson's epistemology within this Brown is uniquely preferable to the affirmative, which means that this should also be an impact to all the frameworks, because there's no reason why any theorems included within the debate through their framework or interpretation should be preferred. Finally, the permutation. This is important. If we win this argument, it includes all of their epistemology. They consider that the permutation is key to formulate a better version of whiteness, because it allows for you to reconceptualize your whiteness in terms of blackness instead of completely rejecting it, which allows for people like the Ku Klux Klan to fill in. They say that permutation would represent the fluidity of whiteness, but or slow the evidence. In fact, versus by saying that fluidity should be reconceptualized. Well, they say that identity politics is an independent dissent to the South already answered. But they say it's equivalent to killing Trayvon Martin. But they can see the proper evidence indicates the state can always be revived. The folks can see the shelf evidence on this question. Yes, remember to the Trayvon Martin was go. Guess what would solve that? Stand your ground laws should be repealed. We should try to enact gun control. Those are all examples of why the state can solve those things.
Congratulations to both sides on an excellent debate. The winner on a unanimous decision is the negative from University Prep. I'd like to go first if I could. Sure. Okay. Other people may fill in the details. I have a couple of things to do, so I may be relatively brief, but I'll try to be thorough. I think that the negative wins the security K. I think they win that the discipline of international relations is a bad one. I think that the Rodriguez card is pretty good on this. And I think that the Krishna card is really actually quite good on this. I thought the 2NR actually should have been a little bit heavier on Krishna and a little bit lighter on Rodriguez. Rodriguez is good and worth extending, but you're so heavy on that throughout the debate to the point of rereading it from the 1NR. And I thought that Krishna actually made some of the stronger claims about how there are occluded knowledges that are built into the structure of the discipline itself that stop any of the possible studies or conclusions from being correct and mean that it's overall wrong. And if that means that your impacts are wrong, that becomes very difficult for me to justify an affirmative ballot. There are some other ways that I consider whether or not I could justify an affirmative ballot on the critique flow proper, like maybe you turn the K but they turn the case, but I thought that they turned the case, and there isn't a place. You mentioned studies, you mentioned empiricism in the 1AR and the 2AR, but I don't think you answer their indite of how those studies and that empirical data is constructed. I go through your evidence through all of the multilateralism and hedge type evidence, like basically every 2AR card, to see if one of them maybe has, to see if maybe your evidence speaks for you and it contains an insulated defense of your methodology. But first of all, I don't think that it really does. The pieces of evidence that I think come closest on this, just one second. Sorry. The piece of evidence is the Brooks evidence says there's a lot of scholarship, quote unquote, which is the extent of the defense of the epistemology. So it's like hard to just kind of stack up the scholarship and be like, well, there is a lot when they've indicted the premise of the discipline itself. And then I think that the Wohlforth evidence is close, and that's actually the best card that you have that comes closest. But it doesn't defend against the possible way in which it's misconstrued in the first place. It just says that there are such things as studies. If the 1AR and 2AR have a rousing defense of the need for empirical data and how that it cannot in fact be biased, or at least in some narrow questions, like the question of hegemony, it's not biased. There may be other questions that IR should be asking that it does not, so its orientation may be flawed, but it's still able to have truth value in certain instances. That would be a way for me to see my way to an affirmative ballot. But I don't think that this instance. I think you talk a lot about the impact and the way that your impact affects theirs, which is good, but doesn't answer the prior question of whether or not IR is valuable. So I think that it's better, and I think that there's a political dissad within the Rodriguez evidence as well. I think that you may win your claims of progressivism, particularly because I think you're decisively ahead on the ontological debate. But if I'm going to assume a progressive orientation that I should direct the state towards solving racism, having it defend hegemony is not the correct way to do so. I want the state to orient itself. I'm like the state, into the state. State is cool, progressivism is cool, not everyone, ontological death, not a thing. Even if I agree with all of those premises, the orienting away from hegemony is the best way for me to achieve that. That's sort of my decision in a nutshell. The one question that I consider for a while is that I actually think that the affirmative is decisively ahead on the question of the ontic versus the ontological. I don't think that they should be. Because even their evidence on this is quite good. I think that your answers on this are lacking. I think that the cross-ex goes pretty badly for you on this question. I think that one answer that you should build in as a second line is to be like, there's no real impact to this. Even if they're correct that social death is a social question that can be overcome progressively, it doesn't mean they're the way to do that. And it's been built in very deeply to the structure of the social, so it's something that cannot be, it's something that certainly won't be overcome by normalizing trade relations with Cuba. But I don't get any of that story from you. So the question that I then have to, so there may even be a possibility of a dissad to the alt because they eliminate, positive progressivism, which is necessary. But then I'm like, Okay, so it's difficult for me to find the framework in which I use that to justify an affirmative ballot. If I accept your framework claims that we're simulating USFG action, if you win your framework, you lose because you've lost a DA. And if they win their framework, I think it's not just set up as like the team that best, that best promotes a certain politics, but they say whoever produces new scholarship. They seem to have set up a role of the ballot that's somewhat self-serving, but means that they kind of auto-win. So you may be ahead in the framework debate. That's bad for you. I can't find a framework claim which means that a potential DA to the alt of locking in ontological death is a sufficient basis for an affirmative ballot in this instance.
How do you evaluate the Gunham claim that's like their epistemology has already been, it's not unique because they're coached by people who are part of the...
Oh, that's... I don't think that that's relevant for this debate. It's a little petty, and I think that it's not that which I mean jokingly, but what I really mean by that is that I don't think that addresses the larger epistemological question of IR. So yeah, and the more important thing, I'm sorry, I misanswered your question. The really important thing there is that I don't think that they're necessarily winning a framework claim. The reason that I evaluate framework is to determine if they're winning a framework claim that means that you win because of an impact turn on Wilderson. Because once you lose the case, that's the only way that you can win. Do you understand? So I think you might be ahead on the framework debate and the question of simulation, but that's bad for you because you lost the security K and a DA to the AF. Does that make sense? So whether or not Edmund has things and they say Edmund things is not relevant to the question of whether or not IR produces bad and racist outcomes because of the way that the discipline itself is misconstrued. So my decision takes place within your framework. I just have a sort of modal logic in which I evaluate a possibility that they win their framework but lose an impact turn within it.
Okay, so do you think if I just spent more time on why like our impacts are true, and I guess like set up a frame of analysis that scientists should be preferred because it can be just like misconstrued or whatever?
Yes, if you invest a considerable amount of time in why science is a potential, I do think you need to answer the question of racism. But I think that you do have a potential answer that social science is self-reflexive. And so if bad studies have built in racist conclusions, it does have means to correct that, and it's the only way to have a potential falsifiable methodology. So science has been abused in the past. Like phrenology is probably a pretty good example. Medical science has been abused in the past in pretty egregious ways, but medical science was able to say, hey, we really boned that one, and therefore self-reflexively move on. But I think that the question of method or the question of epistemology on the security K debate is one that you need to attend to, I think, early and aggressively.
Yeah, I agree basically with everything Nutra said. I thought that I could bypass evaluating most of the debate because I thought that you were just behind on whether or not hegemony was good. The 1AR was just too light on the case on actually the explanation of this arg, and so it's hard for me to evaluate the transition wars, and it's not a question of a hedge good bad framing you have in the 2AR, it's a question of the alt, because I just don't think that y'all had that standard for evaluation earlier. And so that Krishna card is really good, that IR discourse is white, it includes a vast amount of violence that is done against the periphery, which kind of goes well with Rodriguez, that hegemony is reliant upon a mode of domestic warfare. The permutation, I didn't think they needed an alternative. I basically agree with Nuge. Even if you win your framework argument, the neg wins. The neg even has an even-if statement in the 2NR that if you're right about we become policymakers, they make an argument that we should focus on creating ethical scholarship, so it's only a question of the direction of the link for hegemony being ethical or not, and you didn't have a util claim, so if I think that hegemony is differentially violent towards marked bodies, then I have to vote neg. State of Nev, 2NR says it's only a question of ethical scholarship, even if it's inevitable. Yeah, that's basically it. Nuge said practically everything else I wanted to say. The one thing that you asked a question about already was the what was the card? Yeah, Gunnel. I thought that I'm open to that argument or whatever, but I just thought you didn't explain it nearly offensively enough. You were just you can't solve your role of the ballot because you're a regurgitation, but you didn't make the argument in the card that's and when we think we actually are producing some type of unique scholarship, it trades off with the tangible goals that they've identified. So even if I thought that they won their framework, that argument wasn't offensive enough within it to win. Do you have any other questions about specific stuff?
I don't have much to add. I thought the Brown evidence is excellent, and I thought you should have maybe sat on that and explained the implications of that evidence. But because I essentially resolved it the same way Nuge did, was just that social death even if social death is not a thing, even if it does reify some systems of Western violence, I think needing to apply that to their alternative or explaining why their alternative doesn't solve that framework or that the way of thinking is really, I guess, important if you want to make it offensive. I just think you all got spread too thin and kind of didn't see the forest through the trees a little bit, because you just had to defend your scholarship. That's essentially what they're asking for, and just saying hedge good and like multilateralism solves like cooperation in the international sphere just isn't really responsive to what they were saying. And so just like in reading your cards, that's why I kind of kept asking, like, are these the cards you're saying hedge kind of reforms itself? Because I guess I was looking for some way that it actually reformed scholarship, but it's just kind of like people get on board with us and think when we're legitimate and we can cooperate on things, but there's just no application of that to what they're doing. So I think they kind of win a racism disadvantage, essentially, that is not really answered. I thought a little bit about, like, we need hegemony to solve racism, that sort of thing, but it seems like if you're not really answering those scholarship claims from the get-go, it's hard to resolve, I think, that debate in your favor, that turn debate. So you just have to deal with those basic scholarship answers, I think, first and foremost.
So do you think it would be better to just not go for the permutation, just extend?
Yeah, I didn't think the permutation was. It's like you're going for hedge, so I'm like,
Also, like you got to answer the.
Just like their card is like.
Throughout the debate, they've been like, we don't need an alt, so that obviously renders the permutation problematic.
That's true.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was like the white stuff not, because like they're like permutation you go, we're like, you said your politics are different.
They had a pretty good card on like whiteness can reform itself. Like this was an instance where both kind of teams asserted the argument, like whiteness is fluid, the permutation is fluid, permutation equals whiteness transitively, and they were like, no, whiteness isn't, like, the fluidity of whiteness isn't that bad, and it was just like didn't get resolved much beyond that. I just kind of have some advice for y'all. Like, it's really good that y'all are so tech in the block, but I think in the 2NR you should try to be like a little more meta. You just went for too much, and I thought that the 2NR basically could have just been all of the arguments on the case, because the 1AR on the case was like so fantastic, and the 1AR kind of like. The 1AR overcovered the anti-blackness business and undercovered the hegemony business, and so you could have just gone for all of the arguments on the case, and then your role of the ballot about producing knowledge as your alternative, because I think that's totally chill as an alt. You don't really need one, and that would have been enough. And then you could have, because that was partly you went for too much, but that was partly why I think me and Nooch and Christina thought you were a little bit behind on like whether or not anti-blackness was ontological, because you just had to go for too much in the 2NR. Because you have the explanation for all that stuff in the block, but it just doesn't make it into the 2NR. And one other arg I thought you could have extended a little more in the 2NR was just the Kaplan. The idea of transition wars relies on the creation of a civil-uncivil dichotomy, and like those epistemology args are functionally in the Krishna evidence, but you could have contextualized a little more from hegemony, and especially if, like, in the 2AR they're like China and Russia are more racist. Well, that begs the question of how that demarcation is made.
Thank you.
Good luck.